I'll call the city council work session to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman. Here. Stovall.
Here.
Vining. Okay. Germaine. Here. Lamore.
Present.
Felder.
Here.
Mayor Clark.
Present. Clerk, next item.
The next item would be any public comment.
So at this time, as we are aware, our last meeting, a meeting with the manager, the clerk, and myself talking about how to manage this meeting, we thought public comment, as we know, needs to be part of this. If we do it at the beginning, related to the agenda, it gives them, as the manager said, gives them the opportunity to speak on the items on the agenda. So with that, at this time, are there any public comments from those present here this evening? Any comments from those present? Seeing none, clerk, next item, please.
The next item is our work session agenda, and item 4140 is the election update.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson?
Yes, Your Honor and members of council, I thought for this work session might be prudent, and I had a conversation with Clerk Lavoie, and I asked her that right now would be a good time to kind of give an election update to all of you, being that there are deadlines for all of you who are running for office again this year, and to remind you all of those things, as well as anybody in the public who wants to throw their hat in the ring to join the city council. I thought it'd be good for her. Plus, there are many new election updates and it's going to be pretty substantial changes for the 2024 election, and we give her a chance to kind of update you where we are as a city with prep for that and the changes that'll be coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not used to being on this side, so thank you for giving me some time on the agenda this evening. I'm going to do an update about the 23 election cycle, the 24 election cycle, and then dig into a little bit Proposition 22, Proposal 22-2, which passed last November. That's really had a huge impact already on elections, and I won't be able to go into all the detail that I could. I was asked earlier if I was going to make this exciting. I find elections very exciting, but I'm feeling the pressure. So there will be no song and dance. There will be no fireworks, but I'll do the best I can. So the first item of business is just kind of, I put a packet on your desk, and I printed it so that you could take notes next to each slide. Yeah, that's how exciting I am. I gave you a packet with notes, the ability to take notes next to your slides. But this is the PowerPoint is on your desk in front of you. I've already outlined where we're going to go with this evening, so we'll just get right to it. For the 2023, city election, the election date is November 7th of this year. And in order to qualify for the ballot, a person would have to pick up and turn back in a nominating packet. And the packet includes the affidavit of identity and the nominating petitions. In the city of Monroe, the nominating petitions include some specific items in charter that we're governed by. So we need to have 50 signatures, no less than 50, but no more than 60 signatures. And those signatures have to be of registered voters in the city of Monroe. So we can't take signatures from folks who live in Monroe Township or Frenchtown. They have to be registered, and they have to be registered in the city. We go through the same process with petitions as we do with absentee applications and absentee ballots. We review each signature and try to make a match with that signature against the signature on file in the electronic file. And then if that's not possible, if for some reason it seems different than what's on the electronic signature, or because they sign that pad, the electronic pad, like you have at your bank and everything, sometimes they sign it a little bit, differently. It causes us to take an extra look at it. So then we go to the paper files that we still maintain. Everyone has a voter card with a signature on it in the office. And then if we can make a match, the signature counts and goes towards the count of 50 to 60 that are necessary. If it doesn't, then that signature line is rejected. So the process began in April and it continues through July 25th. Nominating petitions are due back by 4 p.m. to the clerk treasurer's office. If someone tries to turn something in at 4:01, 4:02, it's just not going to happen. If someone turns in a petition packet at 4 o'clock and we go to check it and for some reason they're short signatures, there's nothing that can be done because no more signatures can be turned in after 4 o'clock. That would be considered a partial filing and they would not become a candidate. So it really behooves everyone to try to get them there before that, 24 hours even before the deadline allows us enough time to check them. If somebody turns in their packet and then they think, well, wait a minute, I don't know that I want to do that. There is still time to withdraw from the election. You can pull, with a written request, you can pull your nomination out and you would not be on the ballot, and that would be due by 4 p.m. on the 28th. So is any questions about that? Okay. So you're excited, right? I can tell. All right. So what's new about the city elections in Monroe? Because I'm sure all of you have heard about the changes that are coming. The changes that Proposal 22 to the biggest changes will not be until we have a state or federal election. So things like early voting, you won't see that for this election. So mostly everything will remain the same. It'll look the way it does pretty much every election for residents. All of the precincts will be open. Absentee voting will be available. And those absentee applications will go out in August, and the ballots themselves will go out about the week of September 25th. Now, one of the changes that people might notice is that it's return postage now on the applications and on the ballots. So if you vote absentee and you return it by mail, you would not have to put a stamp on it. That it was mandated by the proposal, and it's state-funded postage. For the May election, the city of Monroe had to take on that cost up front and then be reimbursed from the state. By the time the November election rolls around, we will have our own unique permit that is attached to an account with the post office and with the state. The state will have placed funding in it, and we will no longer have to upfront that cost. So I want to assure folks, though, because I too am a taxpayer and I understand the importance of every dollar that we have that is spent. And what folks just need to realize is if they have an envelope and they put it in the drop box, then that permit's not going to be charged, and it won't come off the account, and there won't be any taxpayer dollars involved if it goes in the drop box. So it's not really a waste of postage ever, just because the permit is printed on the envelope. If you put it in a drop box or if you hand carry it back in, it's fine and it won't be charged to the account. So I want everybody to know that that's no problem to do that. But if it's most convenient to drop it in the post box and let the postal service bring it back to us, that's fine. The other thing that might be a little bit different is in May, for those who participated in the May election, and that was a small number, but for those that did, if they checked the box on the application that indicated that they wanted to receive a permanent absentee ballot, that means that they won't get an application for this election. They instead will simply get their ballot when they're mailed in September. So right now, we're going to be maintaining two lists. We're going to have the permanent absentee application list, and we're going to have the permanent absentee ballot list. So anyone who signed up over the last several years, it really exploded between between 18 and 20. We went from about 2,000 absentee applicants who wanted to be permanent absentee applicants to about 5,000. So we had 5,000 folks on the list who said, yep, every election, send me the application. I'll fill it out if I want to vote AV, and I'll send it back to you. Now, in addition to that list, we will have folks that will have signed up when they get their new application and check the box that said, I want a permanent absentee ballot, which means one application is all you need to receive your ballot then for every election. So we know that we're going to have to work with folks on that because that'll be different. So if somebody talks to you about it and says, hey, they just sent me this ballot, please just try to remember that if we did that, it's because we have their application on file that asks for it. But we're going to do a communication campaign to help people remember that and to help them find what fits best for them. And if somebody wants to move back and forth between the lists, that's what my office is there to accommodate, and we can help them with that as well. So that's going to be a little different for voters. Sure.
So if someone doesn't remember what they checked off on that box, should they still get an application from your office just to be safe?
It's a call, and we can look them up, and we'll be able to tell them what their selection was that we have on record. And then at that point, if they're comfortable with it, we'll go with what they selected. And if for some reason they'd like to change their mind, we can do that at that time as well. Yeah, we're happy to help. Good, that's a good question. And then finally, the only other thing I wanted to say about the 23 city election is that per charter, the council is the canvassing board for the city election. So Thursday, November 9th, 2 days after the election, the council will convene in this room and certify the election. Now, the county will still also be certifying the election as well to fulfill their state obligations, but we maintain our canvass because that's what we are directed to do by charter. And it's a nice double check too. All right. Are there any other questions about the city elections? Okay. All right. Now we're going to move on to something that's a little less sure in some ways. The 2024 election cycle. I'm going to start with bullet number 2, the August 6th state primary, that's set. The November 5th presidential election in 2024, that too is set. That date's not going to change. The one in question is the February/March presidential primary. As you may be aware, the legislature passed a bill that moved the presidential primary from March to February. But there's been some back and forth about that. It did not have immediate effect, which means we have to wait until the legislature adjourns in order for that to go into effect. So we're kind of in limbo right now. I, as clerk, am preparing as if the primary will be in November. With the new rules surrounding Proposal 22-2, there are quite a few deadlines that we have to adhere to pretty early on in this calendar year. So myself and the county clerk and other clerks, we're just operating as if it's happening in February and getting ourselves ready. And then if something happens and the legislature finally confirms that it's going to be a March primary or that it'll be a February primary, either way, we'll be ready. So look for more information on that. Right now, it's either going to be February 27th, so the last Tuesday in February, or I believe March 12th was the alternate date. And it's important to note that the presidential primary will be the first election where we will be having the early voting, the 9 days of early voting. So we may be voting as early as, a little bit after mid-February and for the early voting, or it may be pushed back a couple of weeks. But it's going to be quite interesting, I think, because it's going to be a new process. It's not a new process in terms of that it's never happened anywhere else, but it's going to be new to the state of Michigan and the clerks here. And while we're preparing for it, there's going to be, a few adjustments. So we'll be ready for it. But that's something that's going to be happening with that election. All right. So now, Proposal 22-2, the one that's changed every clerk's life, and it's a good thing. I'm pretty excited about it because there's a lot there. There is a lot to understand. There is a lot to implement as accurately as possible. There are still questions, but we'll get through all of that. I don't think, however, we can talk about Proposal 22-2 without talking about 18-3. Does anyone remember 18-3 and what that brought us? That brought us no reason absentee voting. It also brought us automatic registration at the Secretary of State's office. So when you go in to get your license, bless you, you're automatically registered to vote. Register by mail up to 15 days before the election. That was big because in Michigan, you used to have to register by 30 days before the election. So there were quite a few people who intended to vote, wanted to vote, but for one reason or another just didn't get themselves registered in time. So what this did is register by mail and same-day registration kind of took care of that. So now, because of 18.3, people can show up at City Hall, at their county clerk, at their township clerk's office, anything like that, and register themselves to vote day of election. So that changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And that no reason absentee voting was another big one, and that's what caused our lists to swell, our mailing list, where we went from 2,000 to 5,000, because in 2018, when that proposal passed, we were able to vote absentee just because we wanted to, not because we were of a certain age or we would be going out of town. We didn't have to have a reason. There are some that weren't very comfortable with that. That has quieted it a bit. And what I always tell people is if you aren't comfortable with the no reason absentee voting, we are still at the precincts on election day, and we'll help you vote in person. So it's entirely up to the individual voter. But the reason I say I don't think we can talk about 22 without talking about 18 is because I think 18 led to 22. Some of the reforms that the organizers were looking for came about in 18, and 22 was just a continuation of the desire for some of those changes. 18 passed with about 65, 68% of the vote across the state of Michigan. So it was, that's another thing that's always important to remember, especially if you get questions. 22 and 18, those changes were not brought about because clerks decided that had to happen, and we didn't lobby the legislators to make it happen. It was something that was voted on by the voters of the state of Michigan, and it's our responsibility then to carry out what they requested. And in conjunction with the legislature and the Secretary of State and my fellow clerks, that's what we're working on doing. Okay. So now on to 22-2. That passed in November of 22, so just last year. It brought about 9 days of early in-person voting, which we've touched on a little bit, and I'm going to go into a little bit more detail later. State-funded prepaid postage, we talked about that as well. And state-funded absentee voting drop boxes. I'm going to talk about that a little bit right now. The absentee drop boxes are something that we've been bringing online slowly. This proposal has mandated that for every 15,000 voters, we must have one drop box. So for a city like Monroe, where we have 17,000 voters registered, what that means is we need to bring 2 drop boxes online. And I'll be working with administration, with City Manager Robinson, to discuss what the best options for that are, how we make that work. I've been looking at the maps of the registered voters. I've been thinking about where we have a drop box right now that is for ballots, but it also accepts treasury items as well. So really trying to make sure that we locate these 2 drop boxes in a place so that what I'm hopeful for is that it'll be equidistant from one drop box to everybody. So, so folks on the west side will have one close to them, just as close to them as someone on the east side, and then somebody who would use the one here in the center of town. They will not be charged to us. So again, this is state funded. So we will have the option of choosing a drop box, and we merely need to handle the installation costs and the cost of placing a camera on that drop box to make sure that we can watch what's happening with that camera and check to see if something happened. I went up personally to take a look at what's being offered, because there are 4 or 5 different styles. There's one, and I walked in, and it sits there, and it was mammoth, and I said, oh my gosh. And it has a very small slot so that can be locked up, so that when there isn't an election happening, people can't be stuffing it with things. When it's election time, we unlock it, and the tiny slot, they can put their ballots in or their absentee applications, and then there's a double key system to unlock where you would retrieve the ballots from. The story about the one that happened to be my favorite, and I didn't know this when I first saw it, was that the similar model was on duty, so to speak, in Colorado, and it was hit by a bus. And the drop box was intact. The drop box was moved slightly off of its moorings, but other than that, it's heavy and it stayed in place, and the bus limped away. The bus lost that fight. So, and Michelle, you know what those buses are like, right? So that one apparently is built by a metal company as opposed to a company that manufactures the other. So it's really solid, but it may be too big for our purposes. So as I said, we'll be working with City Manager Robinson, and we'll identify those and get those ordered. They're supposed to be online by the November election, but it'll just depend on how quickly they're able to get them here. We have been ahead of the game for a while. We have the one outside. We've had that online for several years, and then we had another one that we pull out for big elections, and we have that inside here at City Hall, so that if somebody just wants to drop their ballot off and doesn't have time to wait at the counter, we've got that covered as well. So I think we're pretty good with drop boxes. So 22-2, I did want to show you the numbers in terms of 22-2. That passed with 60% of the vote across the state, and here in Monroe County, it passed with about 52%. And then here's a snapshot of how it did in the city of Monroe. So again, 18-3 was slightly higher, but it did pass with a large majority of people across the state. All right. So where we're at with statewide implementation is the legislators recently passed 8 bills, which I have here. So these are 7 of the bills. I got through these fairly quickly. This is the big one. This is 93 pages, and it really covers the early voting. And it outlines a lot of procedures. So we have a definite framework, and then the Bureau of Elections will go ahead and flesh those out. So right now, we're waiting on the governor to sign these. Again, this was another set of bills that did not pass with immediate effect. So we'll be waiting for the legislature to adjourn, and then we'll have to move forward with what we've been asked to do. Things in Lansing change all the time, and there are discussions happening all of the time. So, it could be quite possible that we'll see some kind of movement on that and the primary fairly quickly. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm part of the Michigan Municipal Clerks Association Legislative Committee, and I know that the clerks from that committee and that association, along with the County Clerks Association, have really been working with legislators. County Clerk Osment and myself, we went up and participated in a legislative day that we had, which was an opportunity to network with some of the legislators. And then we had a wonderful conversation and meeting with Senator Bellino in his office and talked more about elections. So there's a lot of people working on it, so we can get some answers to these things pretty soon. And then, like I said, we're waiting for the Bureau of Elections, now that the legislation has passed, to begin to flesh out even more of the procedures that we'll need to follow. In the city of Monroe, we will, as I mentioned, we're going to be utilizing the state-funded prepaid postage permit and then the state-funded drop boxes. Another item that I'll talk more about in just a little bit is, I thought, I really need to know what voters are thinking. If I can find some way to ask them, how they usually vote, what they're comfortable with, and how they might like to vote in the future, given the new rules that we have. And I was very careful with the questions, because I don't want anybody to think that we're trying to find out how they're voting or track their ballot or anything like that. But it was just an opportunity to say, hey, in 24, do you think you might vote absentee? Do you think you might try the new early voting? Do you know much about the early voting? So I developed a 6-question questionnaire, and I will show you that in a little bit. And then another way that we're implementing it is just with the election planning, taking what we know so far And while I'm planning the 23 election, I'm already knee-deep in the 24 election. Staff in the clerk treasurer's office has come on board with that as well, and they're working really hard to keep 23 on track, but understanding that we already have to have our eye on 24 in terms of volunteer recruitment, et cetera. I've been doing some research about best practices outside of the state of Michigan in terms of election inspector recruitment and some other items, and I'm hoping to pilot at least one program, maybe another, some creative ways to get some more people on board. Being an election inspector is not an easy task at all, and we have really good election inspectors now, and but we need to add to that. And you'll see why when we get into the early voting. Right now, we have 7 precincts. We have generally 2 absentee counting boards, and we staff the precincts with anywhere from 4 to 6, depending on the size of the election. So if you do the math, that adds up to quite a few hands on deck, so to speak. The clerk's office swells in terms of employees every election day that we have, and with the proposal passage, we'll have to increase that even more. And then, of course, one of the ways is talking to, in the future, because I haven't talked to him yet, really, is Ed Sell. Great guy. I'll be talking to him about some of the budget needs. Although I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to keep them for our city fairly capped, so to speak, and that'll happen with good planning. And that's where I was hoping that the questionnaire might help give me a snapshot into what people are thinking. Early voting. So early voting is just what it sounds like. It's different than absentee voting because in an absentee voter, they bring their ballot back, or they put it in the drop box, or they mail it back, and it stays sealed until election day. Early voting, a person would come in here to City Hall or wherever the early voting center is. They would apply for their ballot just like they would in a precinct, and then they will vote it, and they will place it in a working tabulator. So what that means is that you, as the election commission, for instance, instead of having the pre-accuracy testing right the week before the election, will end up having to have a pre-accuracy testing on the election equipment that will be used for the early voting. We'll have to do that before early voting starts. And early voting starts the Saturday 2 weeks before the election and must run for a minimum of 9 consecutive days. So that'll be Saturday and Sunday the following week, and then through Sunday of the next week. The Sunday before the election is when we need to stop it. One of the things that I think is going to happen is we'll have absentee voters who will maybe not intend to do early voting, but when they walk back in with their ballot, they may ask, can I put my ballot in the tabulator? And the new legislation that was just completed allows for that, which is really a good thing in a lot of ways, because I can't tell you the number of voters we had last year, certainly, who came in and said, well, I don't want to give you my absentee ballot. I want to put it in the tabulator myself. So this will take care of that. You know, they'd heard so much about what was going on with absentee ballots, and they wanted to make sure it was safe, and they wanted to make sure they put it in, but for whatever reason couldn't be there on election day. So this will afford them that opportunity as well. And it's going to operate just like a precinct. So there'll be parallels. We in the clerk's office, the staff, we will have to make sure that we are, and we do it now, but we're going to have to just double it up and make sure, because there'll be so many different tracks running. But we will be making sure that every absentee ballot that comes into the office is as immediately as possible marked off in the QVF system, our voter database. So for instance, if Deb Stilgrave walks in with her absentee ballot and it's sealed and she doesn't want to put it in the tabulator, that's fine. We'll take it in, we'll scan it right away. Her record will show that she voted absentee. That ballot will go safely behind locked doors where it will be kept until the election happens. Let's say Deb walks in 2 days later and instead of talking to Jamie, talks to Megan and said, Megan, I really want to vote this early voting. I really want to do that, because I can tell you really want to do that. And Megan says, okay, well, I need your ID. She'll take the ID, and she'll swipe it, and Deb's record will come up, and we'll have to turn Deb away because it'll be marked in that record. That record also will be copied, and this is where I can get into the weeds because I love the weeds, but I'll try not to do that to you. That record, that will be copied into the laptop, which is the poll book, and that poll book, which the election inspectors will use for early voting, will have the same information. So if Deb walks in and says to the early voting election inspector, I'd like to vote, they say, let's have your license. We scan the license, the record will come up and show that she'd already voted absentee. That's a process we've been using for years in the precincts, so we know it works, and it will work well for early voting as well and prevent anybody from voting twice. Some other things to just keep in mind, there have been a lot of rumors about the security of the elections in terms of early voting and who's going to know what. And this bill has made it very clear, and I'm really happy to see this because I think it's extremely important. Early voting results, I'm reading from the bill, must not be generated or reported until after 8 p.m. on election day. An individual shall not disclose an election result from any early voting sites before 8 p.m. on election day. An individual who violates this subsection is guilty of a felony. Because there's been a rumor that every night we're going to take the ballots out, which we will, to seal into a bag, and they'll go under seal and then under lock and key. But then there was a rumor that we would be printing the tape. And if you print the tape from the tabulator, you see all the results. And I'm happy to report that by law, that will be illegal. That is not what we will be doing. We will have procedures and protocols to follow, but that machine will hold the results in. We will balance. We will make sure that if we have 10 ballots in that box, that we had 10 that matches the 10 voters we had come in. But beyond that, we will not be printing anything from the tabulator, and we will have no idea how candidates are doing, how proposals are doing. So I wanted to make sure that I really got that out there because that's been a huge concern of mine and a lot of people, and I'm very thankful to say that that is not the case. But again, the ballots will be sealed and locked away, and then any AV ballots, as I mentioned, can also be turned into the early voting center. Are there any questions about early voting?
Previously, with absentee ballots, you could come in and void an absentee ballot and then say, I want to vote in person instead, or I checked the wrong box, or there was something wrong with my ballot, whatever. If I'm putting it into the tabulator, is that still an option, or
No.
that's off the table?
That's off the table. If you choose to run it through the tabulator, it'd be just like on election day. If you ran your ballot through the tabulator at a precinct, you'd be done. That would be your vote.
Okay. So if in that 9-day period, candidate A cheats on his spouse and that's the guy I voted for, and it's like, well, I don't want to vote for him anymore, you're stuck. Doesn't matter. You're done.
That was an interesting scenario, but yes, you would be done. Yeah, you'd be done.
So I guess I'll follow that, because I was thinking the same thing. If a person doesn't put it through the tabulator, but it gets put as an absentee, can it be retracted then? It's not been counted yet.
It's not been counted yet, so it would have to be, it would be rejected. But I'm going to check on that, to be honest with you, because there have been some changes over the years with absentee ballots and when you can still spoil them.
Right.
And that was due in part to some of the new rules surrounding when we can start counting absentee ballots, which is something I didn't even put in the PowerPoint. But there is a provision in the law, depending on your registered voter threshold, which we fall into, we would be able to start counting absentee ballots earlier than election day. And once that happens, once you start counting, you definitely can't retrieve a ballot. So my short answer to that is, if nothing has been counted, I believe there still is a mechanism to spoil. But once ballot counting starts, even if we've only gone through precinct 1 and 2, but you're in precinct 3, it won't matter because the process for counting ballots has already begun, so you wouldn't be able to get it back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay.
Not
I'm
this time.
almost done. Budget impact. So we've already talked about it. The prepaid postage permit, there won't be any additional cost to the city. Drop boxes, the cost will simply be to install and the box and the cameras. And early voting, I think, is going to be the biggest expense. Early voting, and if we count absentee ballots early, and that will be up to each clerk. If there are 1,000 absentee ballots, I am probably not going to incur the expense that would bring to the taxpayers in the city, because you won't get the results any faster. Obviously, we wouldn't reveal the votes. The same thing, we wouldn't print the tapes. And I don't know, we could easily get that done on election day. We've gotten up to 3,000 absentee ballots, between 2,000 and 3,000 absentee ballots counted in one day. So I know we can do that. So I'll have to decide on that. But the early voting is obviously going to cost. I'm estimating between 20 and 25,000 for early voting. I don't intend, we as clerks have the ability through this new legislation to extend our early voting days and our early voting hours. I don't really intend to do that. I think we need to do the 9 consecutive days, make sure it's available, and see how it goes. Now, with any of these new law changes, we've seen shifts. For instance, when the no reason absentee started to happen, we saw less people at the precincts. And, it's possible that with the early voting, we may see even fewer people at the precincts. We may see less ballots in the absentee counting board because they're choosing to put their ballots in the tabulator themselves. So we'll be watching the trends and watching for the shifts. But I think there will be some initial costs that we'll be responsible for. But overall, I did the math today, and I think we can get by with about $25,000 to $30,000. If we can make that less, we certainly will. Funding was appropriated through this last set of legislative bills. $18.8 million has been appropriated for ongoing costs of implementing this proposal. $27.2 million from the state in one-time expenses, and then a $30 million to incentivize county clerks to administer early voting themselves. And what that means is municipalities can either go in with another municipality, or they can go in with the county clerk, and the county clerk administers the early voting. I don't know how any of that money is going to be, how it's going to get to us. So I don't know yet what percentage. It's entirely possible that everything I've estimated in terms of election inspectors and new tabulators that we'll need, because we'll need a couple extra tabulators for the early voting, that may be taken care of with those with that 18.8 million. The 27 million in initial costs. We were fortunate; they've given us money in previous years for additional tabulators when no reason absentee voting happened and we needed additional tabulators. We may get that again. So I think the budget impact is tonight. I just wanted to get you to understand that there probably is going to be some extra money needed by the clerk's office next budget cycle, but we'll be doing everything we can to minimize the costs, and I'll be watching everything that is an opportunity from the state, and making sure that we don't miss any of those deadlines and we take advantage of that. So, and any other questions? Now's the fun part, and then I'm gone. Or back to my spot. Brian?
Thank you. You say cost of the equipment. What equipment are we looking to get? Just early voting equipment specific?
So I just need an extra tabulator, because there's some discussion about whether we'll be able to use the tabulators that we use for early voting, if we'll be able to convert that then to a day of tabulator. And there's another little hitch to that. Not in 24, but I believe in 26, they're going to extend early voting one more day, maybe 2 more days, and take it up through the election. So that if you register to vote, instead of voting absentee or going to the precinct, you'll have one more option, which is to put the ballot in the tabulator. So I think it would just behoove us to have 1 or 2 additional tabulators, and they're about 5,000. But I'm really confident that the state that would be one area that we may get some additional funding. I don't know if there's any HAVA money left yet either. That was grants from way back in the day after the hanging chads and things like that. It was Help America Vote, and the state has gone to had some of that money left over and has gone to it a couple of times, and there may still be money left over for that. But we definitely will need some tabulators. The VAT, which is the voter assist terminal for those who maybe need to vote with headphones on so that the ballot is read to them or need some sensory help, we shouldn't have to get another one of those because we should be able to just take that to the precinct the day of the election. Another reason, though, this is a good opportunity. We have had instances where the tabulator just simply stops working on election day. Those are my worst moments on election day because all of those people are in there trying to vote and they just want to put their ballot in the machine, and then they have to trust in me that we're going to handle those ballots properly and handle the switch off properly, and they do. I remember in 2020, Precinct 6, that just stopped working. Director Tolstead, I had him stay with me to make sure that the residents who were voting there understood that we were taking this very seriously, and some of them stayed, some of them left. When we got the new tabulator that our vendor brought for us, we were lucky, they had an extra one. I explained every step by step what was happening, and it turned out okay. But if that vendor hadn't had an extra tabulator, we would have been in real trouble. So that's another good reason to have it as a backup. That's a great question, though. All right. Okay.
Other questions? Michelle, you said September is when the AV ballots
For
usually
2023, yep.
go out. I mean, I know you don't have a specific date, but it's usually a time frame.
So the Thursday of that week, and I haven't looked up that date, is the date that we have to have them out by. So it can't be any later, so that would be Tuesdays, 26th, 27th, 28th. I believe September 28th would be the last day that we would have to mail them to voters who have requested them by that date.
But they could go out earlier.
It could. And when we get closer and I have a better idea, I generally share that with everyone so that they know it's coming. Because it's helpful for us too. If they know it's coming, then if they don't get it, they can let us know, hey, this is a problem. People are watching for it at that point.
Okay.
So
That's the reason why, because they're looking for the date. They wait for it. Many people will complete it over the weekend, and it comes right back.
right,
So,
comes right back. And we're ready for it. We have everything in place for it.
preparing schedules and all that, plus the early voting. So thank you.
And people have to, if they're going out of town and it's close, they have to decide how they want to handle that. So, yes. All right. So finally, we launched a voter questionnaire, about 3 weeks ago. We have just over 100 participants so far, and I'd like to get that number up. So for anyone who might have a location where they could put some of these out, it's a flyer about it. There's a QR code on it. But I also wanted to show you, I know we have a lot of surveys and questionnaires that we utilize in the city, but it's really a great way to kind of just get a feel for what people are thinking. So it's available through our website. It's also available by accessing the QR code. And once they access that, by the magic of our director of communication, who helped me set up that QR code, it worked. So this is a copy of the survey. It's 6 questions. It literally will take whoever participates in it probably about 2 minutes. And it's just very simple. It starts off with, are you a City of Monroe voter? If they're not sure, that's fine. They just click not sure and they keep going. Are you aware that Michigan is making plans to implement early voting next year? And then they look at it. Yes, I know about it. I sort of know about it. I don't know anything about it. Then I give them the option, and I'm pleased to say that a number of people have taken advantage of this. If they say yes, it pops down a box where they let us know what their email address is, and then we'll have some education information that we can send to them and begin a dialogue with them about what's happening with elections going forward, things that they need to know. How do you prefer to cast your ballot? Kind of getting them to think about how they've done it in the past. And maybe how they might want to do it in the future. And then very specifically, we ask them, in 2024, which option are you most likely to use? Again, it's really for planning purposes to kind of give us an idea, a snapshot of what people are thinking. The trends are interesting. I'll bring them back and let you know once I get them. I was a little surprised by some of what I saw. and it'll be interesting to see if it shifts. But I wanted to wait until the survey was complete before I divulged any of the results. And then I'm always making plugs for election inspectors. Election inspectors, we need more people. We need folks that are willing to be on a computer, that are anyone who's comfortable with managing and maybe would like to think about more of a leadership position in it. There are a couple of other positions that I'm thinking of trying to hire for, which would be an election inspector that maybe in some places they call them super chairs. They kind of float between one or two precincts, and that way they can serve as somebody who can jump in if something happens, but they can also just are a fresh set of eyes maybe at the end of the night, and they're an extension of our office. Up to this point, we've had some folks from City Hall kind of occupy those positions. Dr. Everly has helped with elections, and we've really appreciated that. And we've had a few others, and it does make the day go more smoothly. So if somebody would like that and they say yes, they have the opportunity to go right to the application, because I don't want them to change their mind. So they can go to the application, fill that out online, and then we would contact them and get them involved in training, et cetera. And then just any additional comments. Somebody may want to say to me, precinct 1 sometimes is really hard to vote in because the line is really difficult. And I'm aware of that, and that's something I'm working on. But it's just an opportunity for anyone who answers this to kind of tell me what else they're thinking about elections that may not have anything to do with the early voting and Prop 22.2, but it's still really important information for me to hear, and maybe they don't want to call in, so they may want to fill this out here. If any of you haven't taken the survey yet, I really encourage you to do that, and if you have any family or friends that you could send this off to, it would be great, because the more participation, the better we are going to be able to plan things. So that's what I have this evening. Any more questions? I'm not going to dance or sing, no matter how much you beg. Yes, the communications department has been really great about it. They've Amy and Jody have both been working on it. We're gonna regroup tomorrow and have another meeting about how to make a last push. We're gonna run this survey probably through the end of July, so there'll still be opportunities to get that out there. Maybe we'll do a video promoting it or something too.
I'll look for it and then I'll share it.
Okay, great. I really appreciate that.
Other questions for Michelle?
And of course, I'm always around. You know how to contact me, or if you get questions from constituents that you're not maybe sure how to answer, or if it's an election question, you know that it might get a little more complicated, and even maybe what they've heard has really bothered them, and I can maybe help them understand what's going on, or redirect them, or confirm something they've heard and help them see how we're working to keep the election safe. So please feel free to pass it along to me or contact me, and I'll help you with the questions. And again, if you know anybody who might be interested in being an election inspector, we're definitely working on that right now. Like I said, I'm in the middle of planning 23 and 2024, so anyone that you can direct my way would be great.
If there's no other questions? Thanks,
Okay.
Michelle.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Great for the presentation. I know, plus the fact that it's opportunity for those that can view later and watch, so it'd be wonderful.
I've been here 10 years, and I think that was the first election presentation so next time I come back, I won't have as much to say, because I'll finally have caught up. So, all right, thank you. I'm going to go back to my seat now.
All right, thank you. Robinson, if there's anything that, obviously we have a bit of time. I know we had chatted earlier. You have a request regarding the agenda for council for amendment?
I do, and what I did is today I've worked with our city attorney along with our engineering director and drafted a letter in response to an incident that occurred over the weekend with Norfolk Southern rail lines and the retaining wall along Kentucky Avenue. And what I'm going to ask is I thought I want to make this official letter, let this letter have some official grip to it. So I'd like to, when we get to the approval of the regular agenda, I would like if someone would motion to put it as part of the agenda under the communications section, which would be section 6. And and really, it's for discussion, for you to be able to read. If you hadn't had a chance, and I'm sorry I didn't get the email together to you today until probably 3 or 4 this afternoon. But I want you guys to take a chance and read this correspondence, make sure that it's the right tenor that I'm representing, because I am representing the city along with city council and our residents, quite frankly, on our safety concerns regarding that section of the rail line. And I'll be honest, because the incident was discovered by a patrol officer on Friday night, they immediately followed all protocols, reaching out to Norfolk Southern. And, when they ask, well, when you get when one of your maintenance response teams comes out here and examines it, could we please get a call back? Let us know what's going on. Well, no, we don't do that. You'll have to call us tomorrow for an update, which of course they called tomorrow for an update, and they said, oh yeah, we sent a maintenance crew out there. They checked it. They said it's safe for train traffic, and we'll be monitoring it. Well, when I heard, just to me, when you're talking about something that is now become a national narrative and is important is the potential of the safety to our community and to our citizens about a train derailment or any of that nature, I think that was honestly a very poor response and poor communication. And I think that, because I had help from our city engineering and our attorney, they took out all of the really bad words I put in there and replaced them with proper things, because I was pretty irritated when I was writing it. But no, I think the tenor of it is we want this to be serious, and I believe that it's something that we should be updating our congressional representatives, both on the U.S. level as well as the state level. I think they should all receive this, because something can't be done, because I know that we have in the past sent correspondence and we've received some response, but not response good enough. And I've actually dealt with, Norfolk Southern in another position I was in, and it was just, sometimes I feel like they are not being responsive to the needs of the people in our communities. And I think it's just important, and please, during the break, if you need to take time to review it and whatever, but in that section, if you have any comments, that would be excellent.
So the city manager is asking that we amend the agenda, add the, under communications, this correspondence, but also the opportunity to present itself during the meeting for the manager to give a brief review as well to the nature of the letter, because sometimes people are watching the council meeting but maybe missed the work session. And so we'll take an opportunity then also to have some thoughts. So again, ask of the council when we go into in a regular meeting to amend the agenda at the beginning when requested. Comments or thoughts from council for the manager on that? Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Is this something that we should possibly put under council action, because are we taking action tonight to actually authorize this letter to be sent out?
Well, I'm looking at city attorney. I know we have communications, and I guess it's more of we're receiving it, but it doesn't require it. But I'll leave it open to what Mr. Bud's thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think that it takes council action for the city manager to send this correspondence. I think it's informational for all of you and to give any input before it is sent, but I don't think it's one that needs necessarily a motion or approval. Certainly, though, talking about it in this meeting gives it some, I'll say, level of gravity for the community.
In fact, it's shared with council, and then if as it gets to the communication, if there's any brief comments that council wants to make related to it, I think it'd be fine before we move off the communications item. Other questions for Mr. Robinson? Okay, thank you. So, anything further or questions? Or I know on our agenda it's items review of the regular meeting, but if there's any other items you may have.
No, I think everything else that'll be on this meeting, being it's an odd day for our council meetings, and I think we had kind of a light agenda. I think we're pretty set for the rest of the agenda, unless any of the council members has any questions.
Um, I guess, I know under the consent agenda, but that's an opportunity to pull that for discussion during the meeting. Mr. Robinson, I did have an opportunity, and the Clerk Lavoy, to chat after our last work session. Obviously, we had quite a few items to review, and then we got them in nice packets and information that was delivered to us. As we chatted, I know that council members as well, there's probably some more dialogue that we want to get into those topics. So I know that we've shared that with a few council members. So for the city manager, knowing going forward as we start to plan our work sessions, probably a couple of those right off the top, I think, would be the recreational vehicle, public art, is probably a dialogue at a future work session. We don't need the presentation again, but the presentation was very helpful. I want to thank staff for sending that out, because it really gives us an opportunity to not just read and hear it from the delivery, but then make notes on it as we might have. A couple items that have come to us that we've talked about for a while, so I know there's some future action, but if we could have some Q&A, so to speak, or just some interaction more, I guess a better way to say it, with council, might lead to some revisions. I know that the opportunity was there to send those in, but if that's the case, that's fine too. But that way we have a discussion, a work session before we take an action on. Those are a couple that I had. I know that we had 4 items, I think, that were presented that day. That was kind of my thoughts.
Okay.
So we also talked about, I'll just share, because we chatted about the work sessions themselves, and really keeping on task for the time, and recognize that some items may be kind of lengthy, as they might be coming, not the presentation, but even discussion. The last meeting and then we had comments at the end, which, we like to start on time and finish on time, and there's the opportunities, and I probably could have made a request that the last item be moved to presentations on the agenda. So I'd be looking, the clerk and I chatted as well, that if we're getting to that, 7:15, 7:20, we really need to conclude. And it's another reason why the comments are at the beginning. Are there comments that anybody has related to the items? They can have input on those before we discuss during the work session. So we complete on time and start our meetings on time. So if there's any other thoughts that, can let myself or clerk or the city manager know as well. Other than that, I don't have anything else unless others do. So today we'll probably conclude early, which is okay. So if there's no other, clerk, treasurer Lavoy, anything further you might have had?
No, I have nothing further.
Okay. Ms. Robinson, anything further?
No, just other than I'm still learning the situation, and with the working, I already have in my department head meeting agenda is updates for myself.
Yeah.
On the recreational vehicle and the arts, the different topics we talked about. So in planning it for the next meeting, but I feel bad that we're wasting the time here, the extra 20 minutes when we could have had discussion, but I won't let that happen again.
Well, and as we know, some of the staff is not back yet today that would have maybe presented before, and it gives time to send council members to send items in or have a discussion with yourself, and then the staff that way are prepared to come and kind of not just stand there and take questions, but maybe if we have items, send them ahead of time so they can start to think about what might be a revision or reinforcement why it is the way it is, and we can come to. Because these are going to be falling into ordinances or other items, we really should make sure we have the opportunity for discussion. Kelly?
Yeah, we didn't vote on this public art
No,
policy. Okay.
no, this is just, was a presentation of kind of how we got to where we are and then where we may be going in the future. And I think there's a lot that was brought in there. And I think they gave examples where other communities are using those as well when they have an arts council and those type of things. And how that makeup is, I think, is worthy of a discussion. I mean, we've given a lot of favorable comments about it, but also we have to make sure that we're giving opportunities for all that may have an interest in public art and how it gets done, how it gets approved, and make sure we're making sure the reviews are done that need to be done instead of having art show up too. So, and I think they've looked wonderful. What a great kind of a opening for the one that was at Fedco here last week. So it's if you haven't driven down I-75 and looked over there, it's one of the longest murals I think you'll ever find at 300 feet. So, or 306, I think it is. I'm not sure now. So if there's no other comments from council for the work session, well, it's 7 o'clock. So at this time, I'll close the work session. Thank you. Call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman. Here. Steelgrave.
Here.
Vining.
Here.
Jermaine.
Here.
Lamore. Felder. Mayor Clark.
So we all please rise for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Guide our working together, give us wisdom to make the right decisions, your understanding to listen to each other, and your compassion to promote the peace and welfare of the residents of this community.
Pledge allegiance to
To the flag
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is approval of the regular agenda.
City Manager Robinson, I understand you have a request here.
And council, I am requesting that, that we do add an agenda item. It would be under the public hearings, proclamations, communications. It happens to be a communication of a correspondence that the city administration has prepared to send to Northvolt Southern in regards to the condition and recent failure of the retaining wall along Kentucky Avenue.
Thank you. Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to amend the agenda. First of all, I'd like to approve the agenda as written, but I'd like to amend it to include the letter that city administration has brought forward to be brought forward in presentations, communications, and public hearings.
Motion by Councilman Lamore, supported by Councilwoman Stillgrave to amend the agenda, approve the regular agenda, but amend it with the correspondence to be placed under communications. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman. Steelgrave. Vining. Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Clerk, before we get to the next item, I see that our state representative, William Bruck, is here this evening, so I want to give Representative Bruck the opportunity to speak with council here at the beginning. Can introduce himself and kind of chat. Please come up to the podium if you would. And just kind of tell us how you're doing, what's going on, and what big things are happening, and chance to chat and introduce. Thank you. Great to see you.
Thank you, Mayor Clark and Council, City Council. It's great to be here. It's great to be back in Michigan. So I can start out with that. Most people are aware I was down in Virginia. I was on Title 10 orders, active duty for the past 8 months. I got home just under 4 weeks ago. So it's great to be home. It's great to be with kids. As you can see, physically, I'm a little difficulties, but I do have to get my hip replaced, which hopefully will happen this year as a result of the injury I had in January 21 in Iraq. So since being home, I've been able to be up in session for 3 weeks before they went on recess last week. And so I did want to just give a little report on what has been going on. One of the difficulties I did have down in Virginia was on federal orders. There were certain things I could not and could do. One of those things I could not do was sponsor any legislation. I was involved with all the different committees that I am on. I sit on the Transportation Committee, as well as the Insurance and Financial Committee, as well as the Higher Education Committee. So I was able to zoom in to all the meetings. I missed one meeting because of a medical appointment, but otherwise I was able to attend all the meetings virtually. I could not vote in the meetings, so that's another thing I could not do from there or gone. And then participated when I could in various other meetings. But since being back, I was able to get involved in a few bills that I just wanted to highlight, and then some of the emphasis that I'm trying to push up in Lansing. One of those bills I was able to co-sponsor with Representative Zorn, and that's Bill 4158, and that's renaming a portion of M50 after the animal control officer, Darian Young. As she passed away, she got hit by a car in 2020. And so that is moved to committee and will be taken up when we go back in session in August from summer break. So that's one of the ways I can get involved is highlighting our service officers. I know that's outside of the city of Monroe, but I also sponsored a bill, it's 4157, that has been assigned to committee and will be taken up in August when we get back to session, and that is renaming a portion of South Dixie after Captain Joe Lido. And that's renaming from Albin up to Dunbar Road. So that portion would be renamed the Captain Joseph Young Memorial Highway. And I feel that this is a way to, I got 70-some people to sign on, so I do sit in the minority up in Lansing, so there's some things we can or cannot get through, but this is definitely a nonpartisan issue, and I try to push or try to get things done that will help the community. I think one way of recognizing our service officers, and especially Captain Lido that served over 28 years with the fire department, is one way, not just to recognize him, but that our community supports people that put their life on the line for our families and our community. And then I would like to say, I was a sponsor with another veteran for House Bill 4741, but there is good news in this. This is one of my goals in going up there, was to help municipalities, to help townships, to help the local people and my district, my county, my state. And 4741, and in 2012, a little backtrack, they passed a law that if you're a 100% disabled veteran, you don't pay property tax on your homestead. That was a non-funded liability when they passed it, and since that point, municipalities, townships, the city of Monroe, they have to absorb that loss of revenue. So Jamie Green and myself, we sponsored a bill. It almost made it to committee, but the good news is it got picked up, and it's going to be a different number that hasn't come out yet, but I was very quickly able to get on it as a co-sponsor on that bill. It will be presented once we start session in August again. And so I was a little, I'll say hurt a little bit maybe, because our bill did not go through, but it got taken up by, and I don't want to be partisan, but the other side. But the good news is that it's still going to move forward. It's a great idea that got picked up. So my hope is that this will help out townships and help out the city of Monroe. And I have no idea how many veterans you have that don't pay property tax, but especially in a small community like where I'm from, Erie or Ida, even 5 or 6 individuals, that ends up being a lot of revenue. And I'm sure it will help out our townships and the city of Monroe. And then lastly, an issue that I had a meeting with the director of MDOT last week on is the Telegraph Dunbar intersection, which happens to flow into the Monroe Street, Stewart Road intersection as well. There's a lot of issues with the left turn on that is not consistent with the other traffic signals, and there's a lot of left turn accidents especially at Dunbar and Telegraph, high rate of speed, especially when people are coming north. So I was pretty happy about the meeting we had. We had the director of MDOT as well as 4 or 5 of his employees in that meeting, and they gave a lot of ear to what I was saying about those intersections, and also had the state police records, which were able to be provided to me, that substantiate the left turn it's a bad issue that's going on. And so those are 2 things that we are working on, or a few things that I'm working on up in Lansing. And since I've been home out of session, I'm just trying to get around and let people know I'm back in the state, and let them know that I'm trying to do what I can for them. And I do have, the last thing I have is July 14th, I will be doing a coffee hour at Panera Bread. They're on Telegraph, and they'll be starting at 7:30 and go till about 9:30, or as long as people ask me questions or want to drink coffee. So that'll be July 14th in the morning. I guess I open up. I do appreciate the time, Mayor Clark, to be able to be here today.
Thank you, Representative. I know that the coffee hour, so this is the first one. I know you're going to have pretty much of a
Yes, sir.
calendar on that either through your office or will be publicized locally, so available for the communities to come visit with our state representative. So I don't know if there's any other comments or thoughts. I want to thank you for being here. I know that Representative Bruck and I had an opportunity to speak here a week or so ago when I found out he was on the Transportation Committee. The fact that we have I-75, some interchanges at Front and Elm, and that project going forward, and it's a future. It's I think 2028 maybe coming to be, but time for you to work on that so we can get the right selection and input there, and also. I appreciate the discussions on the left turns because we have that throughout our community where some of those they wait to see what the problem is and when it should be proactive to respond to earlier to make things function as soon as new businesses not open up. I understand the concept of not doing it if you don't need to, but on the other hand, some of that's pretty clear by the current volume. But I appreciate your information there. And we look forward to seeing you come back in the future and opportunities. You know where to find us. We know where to find you.
You do. So I try to make myself available, so I appreciate it. And thank you all. Good to see you all again.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Clerk, I guess we'll go back to the agenda now. And next item, please.
Next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments, the amount should read $1,440,218.39, 1440218.39.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to pull for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion? Any items from those present here this evening pulled for further discussion? Seeing none, motion be in order. Councilman Felder.
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to make a motion that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Lamore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out, and resolutions adopted. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman?
Yes.
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the item that was added under presentations, communications, and public hearings. It is communication, correspondence from city administration to Norfolk Southern.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson, I understand we did chat about this briefly at the work session before, but your correspondence, if you want to give some notes to that or some review, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Your Honor, and council members. As you're aware, and I mentioned it earlier, on June 30th, probably about 8 o'clock at night, one of our patrol officers in the city noticed a pretty substantial failure. There's pictures in the items that you were given of the retaining wall along Kentucky Avenue, and it was rather severe, in my opinion. It blocked off. We had to cone off a section of traffic on that road, and had the officer not noticed that, if a driver coming down there had not seen that, it could have been, a serious accident with the amount of cement, et cetera, that was laying in the roadway. The police supervision did exactly what they should do. They immediately reached out to Norfolk Southern, made notification. They did, however, request that Norfolk Southern give, the police department a call back once the maintenance crew had been there to get an update. They were told that they don't do that in order to get an update, you need to call them the next day. So being diligent, the police supervision did do that the next day, called the next day and got the update, and basically were told, yes, they sent a Norfolk Southern maintenance crew went there. They deemed that it was safe for rail traffic and that they would monitor the situation. And that was reported up to me from the Director of Public Safety and our engineer, our city engineer. And quite frankly, I was a little incensed because that's unacceptable communication in my opinion. And I felt that it was important that we put together a correspondence to Norfolk Southern asking that not only would we like to improve on the communication, but we'd like an assessment. We're requesting that they cease rail traffic on that line until we see something that has been not like the actual report from their own assessment from Norfolk Southern, but also a report that has been approved by the Federal Rail Safety inspectors to know that it is truly safe for that rail crossing to be utilized that way. And there are issues that we've noticed all along that area, and we've cataloged a bunch of photographs to attach with the letter that you were provided, that we infused into this document, that we will be sending to as many of the state representatives, all the way up into potentially the Secretary of Transportation, to actually see what's going on here, because out of abundance of caution, we have a duty to do everything we can in order to protect our residents in this city and the people who live, work, and visit here.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I think that the correspondence is detailed. Obviously, it's a communication that's being on the agenda for council's review. It's not something that requires action to vote, because it's going to be sent on, but there's opportunity here if council members have any follow-up comments regarding the correspondence. I think it's pretty detailed. I think it clearly speaks to where we want to go, make sure that it's safe for all, but also what maybe steps we're asking the Norfolk Southern to take in relation to not just continuing until they find out later, but cease until they can get a full determination of the overall safety. Councilwoman Germaini?
Thank you, Your Honor. If we do not receive an adequate response from them, what is our next step to take action?
To be honest with you, being that the rail lines are federally regulated, we don't really have a lot of steps that we can take until there's enough pressure with the importance to our representatives, both in Washington and in Lansing, to try to get together to get something rectified here if Norfolk Southern is not going to be responsive to what our requests are.
And I think that including them on the correspondence, but also personal contacts with their offices so they know what's happening now rather than waiting for it to be delivered, and send it electronically, as I know that you already plan to do, is that we start that communication and dialogue so they can make their contacts even while it's in transit. So I appreciate that. Councilman Lamore?
Thank you, Your Honor. I think there's one other thing that maybe we might want to include in this letter that I forgot about, but just notice that there is a second line not far from this line that is the northbound line for Norfolk Southern. So that statement that you made regarding ceasing operation on that track until it's approved is very good. But I think maybe it needs a little bit more oomph in it to state that they do have another line. So a lot of people don't understand that you're not stopping Norfolk Southern, but just by seizing that one line. They still can move back and forth, north and south, without that line. And I think that may be something important to state. I just thought about that, so I apologize for not bringing that to your attention earlier.
Thank you. Other comments from council? We appreciate the drafting of the correspondence, the input that you received, and we all look forward to hearing back, as I know the residents do as well. It's long been a discussion, and I think there's a resolution that could be even greater in the long run if we get into having some dialogue, and we'll look for both our federal and state legislators to assist in that. So very well. So there's no action taken, but appreciate the input, and looking forward to seeing that correspondence go out in final draft, or final review, and be sent to council, and obviously part of the record, so we can make sure that the public is able to have a read of it as well. Thank you. Clerk, next item.
There are no other items this evening, Your Honor.
There's no council action items, so we move to council comments, and Councilwoman Whitman, it is July.
I think that the only comment that I have is that I hope everyone enjoyed and had a nice 4th of July. And it seems as though everyone was shooting fireworks. And I like to remind people that not everyone likes fireworks. my dog was really not happy, but I also talked to a few veterans who it bothers them. So, but it is what it is. That's what they do on the 4th of July. But it's also very sad that someone lost their life, trying to leave the state park area. And my prayers go out to that family. And that's all that I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Stilgrave.
Just a reminder that tomorrow night at the park, St. Mary's Park, we have the Soundproof Band bringing a concert, and we still have a lot of other weeks to go with a lot of different activities.
Thank you, Councilwoman Vining.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, I missed a meeting, so, I was remiss in not, thanking the city for their help, with the Juneteenth event that we had, the family reunion celebration. Chief Tolstead was very helpful in the, police department. Once again, they came and joined us, and they were just a part of the party, but helping us keep, traffic in line. It was much better traffic control this year. So I really wanted to thank the Monroe City Police and Amy over in Parks and Recs, who just gave me a lot of tips and advice that I was able to use to make the event more successful. And thanks to the mayor and the city clerk who stopped by, and Dr. Everly, thank you. The event is growing tremendously, and I stopped counting around close to 700, but people are estimating that 1,000 people came through. Once again, no incidents, nothing, nothing bad to speak of, just tons of fun. And so we're gonna sit down with some of the city departments and figure out how we can continue to grow the event, make the traffic and the foot traffic flow better. But I just want to thank everybody in the city who helped us get there. So thank you all so much. We had so much fun. And thanks everybody who came in the city to check it out. Also, thank you, City Manager Robinson, for writing that letter. That Norfolk Southern, they are horrible, the way they operate, how they stop on the tracks for hours on end. You get to thinking they do it on purpose. It happens so often. They claim that. I call the police on them when they do it, even though I know in Lansing there used to be something called the 7-minute rule where they could be fined, but apparently they lobbied their way out of that. So on the transportation department, maybe you guys can talk about that, Representative Brooke. That would be appreciated, getting that back, because money is always a good incentive to make people perform better. And so thank you for writing that letter. And thank you, Councilman Lamore, for staying on top of that. And thank you too for all of the help you gave me behind the scenes, gave us to make the Juneteenth event a success. We really appreciate it. I know you didn't want to be called out or anything, but your company is great. I've been using you guys for like 20 years now, so thank you so much. And there was something else I wanted to bring up, but I can't think of it right now. But
Okay.
but if it comes back to me, thank you.
Sure enough. Councilwoman Germaine.
Thank you, Your Honor. So welcome home, Representative Wilbrock. We attended your party last week. It was very fun. I am also glad we're addressing the railroad issue because it's unacceptable, and it's not just affecting our city, it's affecting the nation, and they need to be made accountable. Also, it came to my attention today that some of our residents received some recycle bins with the green lid, and it says, I believe it says trash only. It's not for the garbage, it's for recycle. So the lids were labeled incorrectly, and if you have that lid, which is bright green, and it says garbage only or trash only, I don't remember the wording, but call the DPS department. They are getting those switched out as soon as possible for you. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Germany. I know that also through engineering, DPS, and communications that, there's information and other communications have gone out for these very issues that we've gone through from the days when they're dropped or not dropped, and when what to put in the cans it's out there. So thank you, Councilman Lamore.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to also congratulate the Juneteenth committee on a very successful event. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I was out of town at the time, but definitely look forward to that event next year. Thank you, City Manager Robinson, for putting this letter together. I think everybody knows that I'm like a broken record when it comes to Norfolk Southern, but I have vowed to, and I will stay on top of this as long as I'm alive. My opinion, they fail every community that they've been in, and the bottom line is if we allow them to do this, they'll just take as much as they can take and get away with it. So thank you for the letter. I think it's great, and I think we need to stay with it on this, and for the sake of our community and for the sake of the people that live in that area as well. Had another constituent bring up another good idea or possibility to our residents when it comes to fires that we're allowed to have in our own yards now, in light of the Canadian wildfires, which we've been having a hard time seeing during the day, let alone at night. It might be a good idea to cut back on our fires. And it's something we have to, as a community, acknowledge and understand. If you see that the air is very dense out there and not a lot of sight, you can't see for a very long distance, obviously there's something wrong with the air. Don't contribute to it. Just be smart enough to know that we allow this in certain times, but when we have times where it's very heavy and dense like it has been, looks almost like a fog, probably not a good idea to start a fire. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Councilman Felder.
Thank you, sir. I'm very glad that Juneteenth went well. That's wonderful to hear, and the turnout really is amazing for something like that. I know that you guys have grown over the past several years, and I hope that continues within our community. I'd like also to thank City Manager Robinson for drafting this letter to Norfolk Southern. Hopefully we can have some resolution on this issue. I know that we've raised it to their attention more than once now. And then finally, I just hope that all of our residents had a wonderful 4th of July and everyone had a nice long weekend. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. First, I want to again welcome Representative Bruck. Thank you for being here this evening. I look forward to future updates as your schedule permits and things that may be of importance. And if you can't attend, if you forward along, we'll be glad to have the share that information along. And then your coffee hours, as you mentioned. A couple of items that we've talked about the parks. We've talked about some of the trash. I'll pass on those. Again, the correspondence to Norfolk Southern. I really appreciate administration's and the staff's input to get out in front of that, so we can have it here for not just the council's review this evening, but for the community to know that we have these items, that we are working toward those, and it is important to the federal and state legislators that we continue to get their support and have them included in the conversation. A couple items that have come together. Remember our last meeting, we applied for through SEMCOG for a planning grant for the Pleasance Road corridor on a non-motorized bike paths and trails. Well, I'm here to say that was approved by the SEMCOG Regional Review Committee last week. So it's a $45,000 grant that we're going to have that does the engineering and analysis, and then extends from in city into Monroe Township. So figure the Pleasance is 6th Street, includes Jones Avenue toward Monroe. all the way up La Pleasance to I-75 and beyond into Bowles Harbor and out to Lake Erie. The idea is to make these connectivities whenever we can. The planning grant just allows us to have a plan in place and then to submit the SEMCOG for the Transportation Alternative Plan funding, which pays for the implementation. And I understand now that with the Regional Review Committee that you can put costs for engineering work into not the planning grant, but into the grant that will help pay for it. There is a match, and I think I'm looking forward to get the planning grant done so we can, with Monroe Township and the Road Commission, so we can then apply for the next opportunity to have that installed. Our Trails Committee is working on some other items that are becoming forth to council here soon as well on funding for some trails, other trails inside the city as well. There's awards that I want to mention. The Michigan Historical Commission has what's called the MAAK, or the Milliken Adams Austin Kelly Award. And it's given to a person who shows a commitment to and is very passionate and innovative in exploring, sharing, and stewardship of the history of not only Monroe County, but across the state. This particular was a person who did those items in Monroe County, the River Raisin Battlefield, and the state of Michigan. So Matthew Switlick, and many will know who he is, was awarded this state recognition last week on Thursday, June 29th. But just as I went back to Matt's history here, which was presented, many from our community joined him in receiving that award. But, you know, he's back. He was the director of the Monroe County Museum, I'll say just a few years ago. We don't need to know the year, but he's been very involved in our community. But from 1969 to 2004, he's been expertise through the museum for projects and improvements. He was the person back in the 70s that discovered that we had one of the oldest wooden structures, not only in the county, but in the state, which was now the Navarre Anderson Trading Post, which is part of our legacy, our history, and activities. He currently is also the person that was, when the transformation of the post office to the museum, he was here and instrumental for those reasons. He still remains active today with all of his years and years of service to our community on the Historical Society of Michigan, the Detroit Historical Society, the Monroe County Historical Society, the River Raisin chapter of the Michigan Archaeological Society. And so another one of our residents that just continues to give and make our community better in a historical sense in all facets. So I want to give congratulations to Matt Switlick for his recognition and award from the state on the Milliken Adams Austin and Kelly Award that the Michigan Historical Society gives annually. I think the concerts were mentioned. Finally Fridays. The next one is on July 28th. And we'll have two more of those through the summer, which coincides not only with our concerts in the park on those other days, but it also is part of an item that was on our consent agenda, which is about the recommendation on a social district approval for one of our locations in town. So it'll be on East Front Street, which is Beeks, Mencinos, and Senior Cactus have joined the location as part of the social district, and had a chance to talk to Mr. Bika here just the other day. I ran into him, so it was. I know he would not be able to be here this evening, but I know they're looking forward to be part of that. So people can, and the social district signs are up. I'm sure many have seen those, and I know they've also been posted out through communications as well. So hope to see everybody down there. I think that's my comments for this evening. Again, thank you, Mr. Robinson, for the follow-up, the quick follow-up through the holiday weekend to have this before us today regarding the letter to Norfolk Southern. Councilwoman Vining, I think you remembered the item that you wanted to chat about.
Yes, Your Honor, a couple of them, thanks to you. When you brought up the Navarre Anderson Trading Post, of course, it made me think about Navarre Library.
Yeah.
And the round about $8 million that we just got sitting there, and we haven't done anything with it yet. So I briefly got to speak to City Manager Robinson about the project. I know he needs to dig into that, but I just want to keep that at the forefront of everyone's mind. You know, it's not every day Lansing sends us money, although they've been very generous lately. And, you know, we want to make sure we as we always do the right thing and get the project moving. So I just want to bring that up. I also wanted to thank Woody Hoffer and Planting Seeds, just because I know that the public art policy discussion has come up, and one of our local business owners, longtime business person, Janet Burns, sent a letter. I'm sure the whole council got it. I thought she asked some great questions, excuse me, in that letter. So I really look forward to that work session where we can dig further into that. But I just wanted to say I think Woody and the team at Planting Seeds are doing a wonderful job. So we need to get that all shored up so that there's no problems with the murals that are already painted and the ones that we hope to see in the future. So just a shout out to Planting Seeds. And also on I've already received several complaints or concerns from renters, as I suspected, and I mentioned when we talked about the disposal policy, that a lot of these landlords were going to just pass the cost on to the renters. So just for example, today I got from renters in a multi-unit where their landlord is now going to charge them each $200 extra per year, which I didn't do the math, but $200, you can use that for food or something nowadays. So, I know we already voted on it. I don't know how amendments work or if we even plan to do anything like that, but I just wanted to be made aware to the council and the administration that, as I suspected, it is affecting some renters in a negative way. And it's just a sad situation because how it seems like all of the loss from the last contract to the new contract is falling on the renters of the multi-unit thing. So I don't know what we could do about it, but I got some emails about it, and I just wanted to let it be known. And then finally, on July 15th at the Navarre Library, the Monroe County Library System has started a new project we call it MOCAP, Monroe Orchard East Community Archive Project. And thanks to the clerk's office, the mayor's office, and the engineering department, they've helped us gather maps and other things. And what we're trying to do is collect the history of the Orchard East neighborhood. We've done this in other communities such as Dundee, Erie, and so now we're focusing on the Orchard East area. And what we found is when we went to the museum, the college, and other places, there's large gaps in the history of the Orchard East, or it's just been overlooked and information has not been preserved at all. So this is probably going to be at least a year-long project, but on July 15th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Navarre Branch Library at 1135 East 2nd Street, we are going to do what we're calling a history harvest. So we'll have our scanners, 3D printers, voice recording equipment, photographic and video and audio equipment. We want to invite the people to come out and tell us their stories. Bring your items that you want to preserve. It could be recipe books, grandma's old handwritten recipes, photos. We've done a great job so far in identifying businesses that used to be in the area. We know that used to be the central business district, that 2nd Street area, and we've been able to identify almost all of the businesses going back to maybe the 40s or maybe the 30s even. And the city was able to give us a key map of old businesses. And so we just want you to bring your items, your photos. I had one couple, they brought stacks and stacks of photos and information from Lincoln Elementary School when it was the middle school or the junior high school. So just things like that. Anything, old pictures, old matchbooks, flyers, anything you could bring. But we'll be there July 15th, Saturday, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we're going to do it again and again until we can begin to fill in some of these gaps. So we know we had different ethnic groups who have lived in that area over the years, and we want to gather information from all of them. So I'll say, for example, the French, the Germans, the Native Americans, blacks, whites, or they always identify them as Southern whites, which is like the same thing because the blacks and the Southern whites all came from the same place. But anyway, go figure. But anybody who lived in that area, because most groups started out in the east side of the city and then they branched out, the Italians, so on and so forth. So if you have family history, please bring it. If it started in the Orchard East, we'd be so happy to have you. Thank you, Your Honor, for letting me catch up.
Thanks,
I
Councilwoman.
appreciate it.
That's a great project, and I know that some of the members of the library, but also the community are bringing that together. I appreciate you bringing up the Navarre Library project. I think about our work session we talked about before, a couple of the items on the RV and item, but we could add this also for the manager, to how you fit all those together in the weeks to come on our work session. Maybe that's an update on the status, because there's been challenges with that when you talk about funding and how things have changed since we first received that funding, but maybe what the next steps are. I know that the staff is kind of refining that as we talk, so. Very well. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I have no comments this evening, Your Honor.
Okay. I want to thank you for your presentation during the work session. It was primarily about the elections, both past amendments and updated amendments of working. And if you're watching now but did not watch during the work session, please go back and view that, because it really is a very good presentation, but also informative about the upcoming election and items that are being put in place, and new items that need to be addressed. So thank you, Clerk.
Thank you.
City Manager Robinson, comments this evening?
The only comment besides what we talked about before, I just want to thank the staff here in the city, because they have been unbelievably patient and helpful in my acclimation to the city, from giving me directions on how to work the scanner to how to organize the agendas and all that stuff. They have been, the directors and all of the employees, to include the custodial staff, everybody has been absolutely wonderful. And I just wanted to let you guys know what a friendly, welcoming staff you have here.
Thank you. And then there's the minute track system to get all the things in order. Very good. Thank you for your comments. Next is citizens' comment. If there's any comments from those present here this evening, I'd ask you to come to the podium, state your name, jurisdiction of residence, if you have any comments. So this time, are there any comments from those present here this evening? Any comments from those present? Seeing none.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion from Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaini, to adjourn. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Whitman? Yes. Steelgrave? Yes. Vining? Yes. Germaini? Yes. Lamore? Yes. Felder? Yes. Mayor Clark?
Yes.